Hey, you can probably tell from the episode title that this is going to be very rambly. I've just put up a random picture, of Lyra, my OC, um, for this one, because I don't really feel like drawing, and, I'm trying to edit the current DSO Doodles episode, and if this went up, I also want this to go up today, and, if this went up before that one, it would be really weird and out of order. This is basically going to be like a filler, for the time being. I did do the DSO Doodles next one, and, I was planning on releasing it on time, but I did a bunch of stuff playing around with the new editing software I got, and, now I can't figure out how to export it. So I'm going to have to ask for some friends' help, but we're all so busy that it's hard to set aside some time for it. So yeah, for now I'm just gonna talk a little bit. I really want to talk about narratives right now because, for some background, my I just finished binge watching a series called No Game No Life. It's an anime. It's got some really pervy jokes in it, which I like. It's weird, but the colors and some of the narrative parts of it I really enjoy. And this is not going to be a breakdown of the anime because I don't really analyze individual things. I just want to talk about stories as a whole and how they interact with each other. I think it's really interesting how you can do different things depending on do different things with a story depending on who you are, which is actually one of the things I love about art in general, not just stories, but all art. Who you are as a person deeply influences what kind of art you're making. Unless you're doing, so quick side eye here at Marvel movies, unless you're doing something just to make money out of it. And I only point out Marvel movies because I've seen more of them. I'm sure that DC is just as big of a culprit, and actually a lot of Hollywood movies are these big culprits of it. Where you can tell the plot of the movie 3 minutes in. It might just be me because I'm pretty good at predicting where stories will go because I just have this, like, I've absorbed so many stories at this point that I've seen a lot of the common plots. But still, especially with Marvel movies, it's really easy to tell what's going to happen. The hero is going to get powers. The hero is going to become overconfident and overuse these powers. The hero is going to lose the powers, lose everything else except their powers, or some such nonsense. They're going to lose something because they were overconfident. They're going to have a low period during which time the villain gets the upper hand. They're going to then either their friends come in and help them, or they learn some internal lesson about their story arc. Which can vary from hero to hero, but tends not to be too different from like just accepting yourself and accepting where you are in the world. And then they win. Sometimes they sacrifice themselves, although that self-sacrifice is quickly made meaningless by the fact that the guy survives. And that might just be a thing that ticks me off, but I just hate when the frickin' you have someone sacrificed, like more side-eye, the Enchantress in the Suicide Squad movie. When you have someone sacrifice themselves, when you have someone die, and then you're like, oh, just kidding, bring them back. Because you can't have like any unhappiness in the ending. It can't be a tragedy. You can't have this bittersweetness that this fully realized person has now just died. And of course you have to make sequels for more money. That just makes me mad. I dislike that trope intensely. Unless you have true loss, then how are you supposed to leave the theater or the story or your computer, I guess, feeling like it was a satisfying ending? Like it doesn't feel like a sense of risk anymore. Anyways, yeah, the kind of stories you make, if you're really making stories just because you love making stories, will be dependent on your experiences and your how you feel, and like it's really cool and subjective, and I like absorbing different kinds of stories because then it's almost like getting to know different kinds of people. Like different people have different preferred tropes, and if you can find out one trope that a person prefers, you might be able to analyze the rest of the tropes that they prefer from that. So, for example, let me think. The trope, like the found family power of friendship trope. I really favor that trope, and if you guys are ever lucky enough to read my book, if I publish it, then you'll quickly find that out. You'll start off with a group of friends, and then you can immediately go, oh, so the group of friends is going to save the day using the power of friendship, and you would be right. Because knowing those kinds of tropes is very important to predicting how a story will end. So like some people like the mysterious orphaned main character being the child of someone important is another trope that a lot of people like to use, especially in epic fantasy movies, and in I don't know, just movies in general, I guess. Like Tony Stark was the daughter was the son of these two people who actually were killed by Bucky Barnes. Like everything circles around and it's very neat. Like real life obviously isn't like that, but a lot of authors prefer that trope because it's satisfying to them, and because they like the I don't know, I guess the element of surprise from it, although it's become much less surprising. But yeah, stories, like what kind of tropes you favor are very important, because a lot of authors like to subvert tropes, but you can't subvert every trope that comes your way, because after a while you have to make so many caveats and decisions and things about the story that it becomes way too burdened with the weight of subverting these tropes. So like for example, I kind of disliked the idea that that my characters would have magic that has a finite reserve limit. Like to me that seemed a little silly. I would have loved to give my characters infinite magic. But the thing is, the trope of like you use too much magic and you burn up is there for a reason. It's there to prevent your characters from being overpowered, and I couldn't figure out another way to prevent my characters from being overpowered. Like Lyra, if she could summon as many people as she wanted and hit everyone with her sword a lot, then she would be like impossible to defeat. That's not the point. And then also there would be no sense of risk in using magic, because honestly, you need to have a risk in using magic, otherwise everyone would be using it. And if not everyone can use it, then it would just mean that you'd have a world where there are only a few magic casters, and those few magic casters would dictate everything because they'd have infinite magic and nobody could say no. Like that would be a little silly. So that's where that trope came from. And the narratives that incorporate that trope don't see it as a priority to subvert. Mostly because, like, it's not really. It's actually a pretty good tool to use to limit your characters. Limiting your characters, I think, is very important. And that's why a lot of people don't go after tropes that limit characters. Like, for example, and it's actually a trope I went out of my way to subvert on purpose in Patchwork, because I actually dislike this trope too. The trope where, the bad guy gets the good guy and holds one of their friends hostage. That's a little, like, it's a good way to depower your extremely powerful enemy very quickly. Because, what are you gonna do? That's your friend. Do you want your friend to die? And that's a good way of depowering a fight that may actually have been too overpowered. So, like, for example, if Lyra here was in a fight with someone that she might actually win against, they could take a hostage, and it would become much more even instantly. I went out of my way to subvert this trope because I really hate it. Because to me, your character should be powerful enough to overcome that. And I actually had the trope work once on Lyra, and it stopped working on her after that. She just decided, you know what, I'm going to become strong enough that this never happens again. So that was a trope that I went out of my way to subvert because I disliked it. There are other tropes that I didn't go out of my way to subvert just because I like them or because I thought that they were more convenient. It's just interesting. So like one of the tropes that Marvel goes out of its way to subvert is the intense emotional scene. You know, the intense emotional scene where like everyone is super serious, and you know you're gearing up for the final the final fight or whatever, and then suddenly there's something really dumb and humorous that happens. That's like that. Well, that last part isn't part of the trope. It's how they subvert the trope. And I think they use it a little too much. Like, it gets to the point where you don't think of the character as that serious or amazing. Even so, it can be a pretty good trope to use, or trope to subvert. Another trope I like is the power burst. So this is when you have a character with, it happens a lot in anime, but this is when you have a character with whose emotions are running high, and they get an additional supply of power for it. So like if you're really, really angry or sad or frightened, then your power gets a boost. I really like that trope, so I actually showcased it a lot in Patchwork. Each of the four main characters has a power burst. But some people might go out of their way to subvert that trope. So for example, some people, when they'll state when you make someone angry in combat, then they will get worse, not better. Making someone angry doesn't clear their head, it makes them angry, which makes them more liable to make mistakes. This is just as valid of a story approach as giving someone a power burst. It just depends on what tropes you like and what tropes you want to subvert. And authors set this tone often at the very beginning of their story. So, for example, if you're telling a super serious story, then likely the character's anger and frustration may not lead to a power burst, especially if it's dark and gritty and it's supposed to be realistic. Like, you're not gonna get power bursts out of that. You're probably not gonna get power of friendship out of that. All you're gonna do is you're gonna get dark and gritty realism out of it, which means that when you have angry characters, they're going to make more mistakes. That's going to be a fault, not a virtue. And again, it can also depend on what parts of humanity are you trying to highlight. I appreciate people getting passionate about stuff. I really enjoy watching people get super angry. I guess not angry, but like worked up about stuff, because that means they care a lot. So that's why I have such a strong focus on emotion, and there's such a strong focus on like the power that emotions can bring you. You know, like if you're really fucking pissed, then you can do more sometimes than if you're not. Apathy is like my nemesis, I guess. I hate it. Apathy is the worst thing in the world. But some people want to point out apathy. They want to, instead of saying, look how amazing emotions are, they want to say, look how amazing logical and rational thought is. When you get angry, when you get really content, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry about the background noise. When you get too content, when you get tired, and frustrated and you're full of grief, that's bad. You need to be able to think clearly or you're not going to get through these situations. And both of them are really cool. Like, believe me, I will probably never hate on a writing style unless it's super cash grabby and overused. Like, and for another example of that, that kind of thing, I really like the found family trope, right? Because I like the idea that that you can be close to someone that isn't necessarily blood related to you, because we're humans and we connect, and that's also important. Human connection is one of the things that makes us good, and it's one of the things that makes us important to each other. But you can take another author who has that be something else, where they like the lone hero trope, say. So like if I have a group of heroes fighting together, that's me kind of pointing out, whether subconsciously or not, it's irrelevant, but that's me trying to point out, like, we're humans and we pack bond, and that's important and we need to keep doing it. But the lone hero trope could be saying things like, you know, we are strong on our own. We don't really need other people. It can also, like, just point out, like, the power of individuals. You know, like, each person is this incredible, unique force of nature, and nobody's ever going to convince me otherwise. So if you have this one person fighting against leagues upon leagues of bad guys, that's an important point to make. That, you know, this is one person who's doing this, and it's important to know that they are powerful on their own, and you can be powerful on your own too. Different stories say different things, and I don't want to sound like an English teacher here, because I know that there have been many people who have rolled their eyes at their English teacher who's trying to say stuff like you know, like, about literary criticism, that may be valid but is usually presented wrong. Like, I'm not gonna blame anyone for that, but like, authors do stuff for a reason. They may not know it, and that's the important thing. A lot of the time writing, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just know that I have a story and I have to write it down. But afterwards, I can read through it and I can go, oh, there is a thread here. Like, when I first wrote Patchwork, I thought, I'm going to write a book for myself. I'm going to write a book that I think that I would want to see. A book where, you know, I can make whatever self-inserts I want. I can make whatever references I want. It's just going to be fun. And then I went back and read it, and I thought, this is a book about how powerful people are. And this is a book about, like, how incredible that people can be in the face of adversity. And then I went and rewrote it so that it fit that a little more. And then I went and edited it so it fit it even more, and, like, that kind of thing. Like, I got this idea mostly from Stephen King, so credit to him. He was talking about Last Stand, one of his books, in his memoir, and he was talking about how he really, when he first writes a story, he's not doing anything, he's not crafting something, he's uncovering the fossil, he's gently brushing it off and, like, laying all the bones out and trying to see where it is. And then when he reads through again, he goes, oh, look at all these events that kind of point to this particular statement that I want to make. And then he goes back and strengthens the thread so that when you read it, it's easier to see and it also flows better. Narratives are just amazing, and literary criticism is amazing, and don't I hate that the school system, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in America, the school system really let me down with literary criticism. The school system tries to push symbolism a lot and tries to push, what's the author trying to say with this story? But to me, the first step in literary criticism is to ask, why is this story good? Why does this appeal to me? But you're not taught that. And I actually hated literary criticism for a really long time because I was like, I don't want to think about what the author is trying to tell me. I want to enjoy this story. And I want to think about how it's good, and I want to think about how to make my stories better by using what this story uses to make itself good. And then from there, I was able to go, oh, I think that this story can represent certain things and mean certain things to different people, but I think it means this, and this is how the author did it, and that's really admirable. Like I think schools jump the gun. They start with, what does this mean, instead of, why is this good? And that's not supposed to happen in my brain. Like, you should start off with, wow, this story is amazing. Can you tell me what you liked about it? And then tell me, what about it was good, and then tell me, like, how the author, tell me whether or not the author did that on purpose. So if the author has this character who exists and is like this really fucked up person, and you're like, I really like that. Like, I really like this moral grayness. I like this I like the way that this character interacts with other characters. I think it's good. I think it contributes to the story well in it. And then you can go, oh, yeah, it contributes to the story well because of these things. Like, this character acts as a foil to the main character. Or this character is, important because they represent a part of humanity that is that needs to be represented, like stuff like that. And from there you can go, oh, maybe when the author wrote this book, they wanted people to discuss that. Maybe they wanted to draw attention to this. There's no guarantee, of course. There's nothing that you can say that's like, absolute, definitely this character was made for this purpose. But, like, I don't know. It can be interesting. All you have to do is be interested in stories, and a lot of people, it's very easy to be interested in stories. It's kind of human nature. Like, we were read picture books as a kid to teach us lessons. We watch movies and anime and play games and about stories. And it's important to wonder how they work. And to, I don't know, it's important to just have a place where you can think about what stories mean to you, and how you would make stories. Although maybe that's just me because I like making stories. Yeah, this is getting a little bit long. So I'm gonna cut it off here.